instead of saying, this thing sucks, I suck, I can never do this, I think I've always tried to be very curious. And just exploring art with a sense of curiosity and lightness, I think is a really good muscle that can help make the process feel more enjoyable and not take everything so freaking seriously. So I've coached literally hundreds of composers, and all of them have different aspirations. Some of them just want to get better at music. Some of them want to get better at sharing their music. Some of them want to feel more conviction or happiness around their work. So a lot of the work that I've been doing with people is helping people slow down, get locked into what's important to them and what they value, create some internal criteria for what those things are, and just to exhibit more trust with the process and not be so hurried in their approach or so scarce to try and make things work out.
So I hope that introduction pulled at your heartstrings as much as it did for myself. I'd like to introduce you to my very good friend, Zach Heyde. He is a YouTuber with 2 channels with over 100,000 subscribers or more, and a musical composer, and has always been a freelancer. I had the opportunity to record an episode with him where we got to experience the beginning of his new album, The Call of Raven's Hollow. In that conversation, we talked about overcoming creative blocks, getting better at posting our work, feeling a sense of wonder with the kind of freelance work that we do, and also applying that to our own creative projects. So in this episode of The Creative Adventure, we have an interview conversation with my friend Zach. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hear what Zach had to say in the tavern. Today I'm here with my friend, kind of mentor a little bit as well. You've taught me a lot about freelancing as well, even though we are in a different space.
Feelings mutual.
An artist guide to modern freelancing, and this podcast I typically like to host, pretend we're in a tavern. We're sharing some beer and stew and mead after a long day of adventuring, and now we get to relax from our questing as freelancers.
I love it.
Can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, I'm Zach Heyde. I'm a composer, lifelong composer, educator, content creator on YouTube. Love sharing as much as I can about the creative journey, and more recently I definitely would identify myself as being an artist first and foremost, over a crafts person, which we can talk about more. But yeah, really happy to be here, and awesome to chat with you, old friend.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate you being open to doing this. I primed this to you earlier. The first question I ask of all my guests on this podcast is, what class are you going to take on as an adventurer?
Oh, gosh.
And it doesn't have to be Dungeons and Dragons or World of Warcraft. You could tell me about the roles you like to play in other games as well.
Yeah. I think for me, the characters I relate to most are the ones who follow through on bravery, who follow through on the courage that's required for them to do the tasks, even if they don't feel like they're up to the task. That's something I feel comes up in me a lot in my journey as an artist and entrepreneur. So whatever class that would be, the ones that are focused on bravery, that's where I try to center.
You like the hero's journey.
I do, very much.
Why do you like that journey so much?
I think because for me, I've always felt called to do what I do in the same way that a hero receives the call, which is like also why I named the album the way I did. And the call is something that pulls a character or pulls the hero forward. And along the way, they reach these kind of threshold guardians, these things that challenge them along the way. And in so many ways, I feel like my journey as an artist has been that I felt called to do it, even though in many cases it's forced me to go well outside of my comfort zone in order to accomplish those goals. But ultimately getting past each of those milestones or threshold guardians yields to so much internal growth and is such a fulfilling journey for me that I find myself coming back over and over again to the same journey.
That is something that I think we both have seen a lot of artists struggle with, like even myself personally.
Yeah.
And you've been freelancing since you've graduated college, right?
Yeah, pretty much the whole time. I never worked like a 9 to 5, standard 9 to 5.
So what are we alluded to this earlier, like the dragon being like the hardest monster that you have to slay to overcome and like achieve that call, and like slaying that dragon. What is that dragon to you that like is the hardest thing to overcome?
Oh, I think that the dragon has many forms, and I think has many levels to it. I think in the beginning, the dragon for me felt very tactical, very surface level. So, graduating college, it's like, where is work? How do I find work? How do I make money? How do I get better at my craft? And the dragon was solving those problems in a way. The uncertainty that comes with that, I think, is very, very daunting for a lot of people. And I think there's a lot of scarcity that happens along the way where we basically, anything that comes our way, we're just like, this is the best it's going to get. I got to take it. And so I think the first at least 5 years post-college was learning how to conquer that dragon, the dragon of just stability, I guess, and a sense of a certain layer of security. But I think the second dragon that I've been encountering more recently is about pushing above what you believe is possible and raising what you believe you're capable of achieving beyond just being secure or comfortable. Because I think a lot of artists, including me, once you kind of land into that comfort zone and it's like, okay, I've solved this massive problem of like, I've got work coming in now and I have clients and, money's coming in at some level. It's really scary to let some of that go, potentially, to just take more risks as a creative person and push harder. So I think the dragon I've had has been more about self-belief and about raising my sense of self-worth to try more, even if it means potentially losing the things I've worked so hard to build.
Like for those of you listening to this podcast, we're here because you just finished an album like not by yourself. The previous album that you did was pretty much by yourself, right? And this one, it sounded like you strive and look for things that are beyond what you normally do. Like, how do you encourage yourself to do that? Because I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, including myself.
Yeah. For better or worse, it's like a compulsive need for me, I think. Like, I can't help it. If I feel like I'm misaligned with what I'm doing in my life, even if it's just like 5 degrees off, which is not that much, for me, it can be excruciating. And I've always said to people, like, I think my pain tolerance is actually very low. I don't think I can handle a lot of pain. And so for me, it's kind of just a natural consequence of I just don't like feeling this way. Like, for example, we talked about it a little bit before, but with the album, I just hit this point where all the work that I was doing, it was paying the bills. It was predictable, actually. It was stable, but it was comfortable, like too comfortable. It was like, I know how to deliver this. I know how to do the work for these clients. They're happy every time. It was so predictable that in a way, ironically, it was not creatively fulfilling for me. And so I think I needed to disrupt it a little bit and just create something that felt a little bit like exciting again. And this album has felt like that, and I don't think that people need to leave their 9 to 5s in order to do that. But I do think that there's a responsibility for every person to create that sense of personal challenge in their life. Because we tend to think that comfort means we're happy. But in a lot of cases, when we get that comfort, we wind up stagnating. And I think it makes us feel unhappy in the long term.
You do a lot of coaching with artists. And earlier we were talking about how so the composers that you work with, you originally were thinking about like, I'm going to do coaching where the outcome is money. But now you've kind of shifted that to trying to share your mindset of just being more confident, more
more willing to share their work. And like you obviously had to overcome some of those things. So like what do you think some of the things that most artists are struggling with now, and how do you help them overcome that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's interesting. I think so. I've coached literally hundreds of composers, and all of them have different aspirations. Some of them just want to get better at music. Some of them want to get better at sharing their music. Some of them want to feel more conviction or happiness around their work. Some of them want to go to Hollywood or do it professionally. Some of them want to find leverage. Everybody has different goals, but in my experience, in my life, and also the people I've worked with, it does usually boil down to a couple of recurring patterns at different levels. So one of the patterns that I notice at all levels is self-trust. That's something that a lot of at least composers struggle with, but I would imagine all artists struggle with, is this idea of self-trust. And in the beginning, I think the way we cope with that is we look for mentors, people to kind of guide us on our path, because there's so much uncertainty with art careers in general or pursuing art, and it's so subjective. That's something I hear so often. It's like, how do I know if my work's good enough? It all becomes comparative, and we kind of look towards these mentors. That helps a lot in the beginning, because finding people whose work resonates with you and stuff you really like is a great guidepost. But ultimately, at a certain level, we have to have a certain level of self-trust to create our own criteria for what is good and what is not good, and what is right and what is not right for us. And I think that what's required for that inner criteria is a lot of internal reflection and internal work as opposed to external. And because we live in a world where so much stuff is thrown at us, you could be like on your path and feeling good about it, and then you open up YouTube and it's like how to make 10K a month, or why you should stop doing this. We're just inundated with all of this external feedback that just totally derails us. And so I think what I've seen recently is people are really struggling to stay locked in to what feels right for them, because as soon as something comes up online and they just open their phone, like suddenly their entire business plan is derailed, and they're in the middle of starting a brand new business model because of something they saw 2 weeks ago, and it's just buried in their subconscious. So a lot of the work that I've been doing with people is helping people slow down, get locked into what's important to them and what they value, create some internal criteria for what those things are, and just to exhibit more trust with the process and not be so hurried in their approach or so scarce to try and make things work out.
You've been a really big inspiration for me, because you've always had a very good sense of your own self-validation. Because I think one of the things that happens with bringing on a mentor and being on social media is we are effectively outsourcing our validation. We're taking the approval of other people and quantifying it into either the mentor saying your work is yay or nay, thumbs up or thumbs down, or likes on a social media platform, whatever that is. And that becomes so crippling, because we are effectively waiting for other people to tell us that we're good enough. And you've always been really good at just blocking that out.
I'm glad it appears that way.
Really? Do you struggle with that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, very much
so?
So the way that I coped with that, the way I was really good at that for a while, was by not letting anybody else in. So for me, the solution to that problem, because I would feel it sometimes, was like, I'm not going to seek help from anybody, ever. I'm just going to figure it out on my own. And it worked. Like, to an extent, it helped me to grow, but it came at the consequence of like feeling connected and getting expertise from people who are just better than me at stuff. And so I opened those doors a little bit last year when I started doing when I became mentored, when I started working with a mentor. That was really the first time I let anybody in like deeper into my business. I worked with an amazing guy. His name's Rich Webster. He's just a total badass. And what I liked about him was he was very lifestyle business oriented. So I aligned with that, even though he was not a composer. There was good alignment. And he helped me massively. Like, he really helped me to reframe some things, to raise my self-worth, all of the good stuff that comes with coaching and mentorship. The problem that happened for me was I now had a new comparative point for somebody who had accomplished something that I wanted. And so I started to feel slowly I was losing that sort of inner compass for what I wanted and kind of becoming almost like enmeshed in a way with my mentor. And I had a choice. Actually, November of last year was kind of my renewal period for 1 year. And it was a really, really difficult decision because I really wanted to keep working with him. He's an amazing dude. But I also kind of knew, hey, the only way I can solve this is finding this like in between where I'm not totally insulated from the world. So I want to be able to accept help and expertise from people without letting it totally erode my sense of confidence and psyche. So that's a really hard thing to develop. And it was very hard for me to develop that. So it's an ongoing process. I feel much more convicted about it now than I did before. But it's started to become about like slowing down in a lot of ways and learning which decisions of mine are coming from a place of fear that feels like excitement, and which decisions of mine are coming from a place of intuition, which is like soft and quiet and slow and patient. And for a long time, I thought I was always making decisions from, this is a great idea, I should do this, and realizing, actually, no, I'm just freaking out because like it was a slow month and there wasn't any money coming in. I'm starting to learn the difference internally for what feels like a good intuitive decision while still being able to let other people of expertise into my life and not let them derail my vision for what I want for my business.
It sounds like you're getting a lot better at filtering, like what is right
Yes.
for you and what is not.
Yes, which I think is really, really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not an easy process because, like I said, we're just inundated with stuff. I mean, it's how do you find that sweet spot between really dialing in the parts of people's expertise that serve you versus being able to say, hey, I recognize that's a really great idea, but not for me.
Mm-hmm. When do you suddenly have to like put the guardrails up and be like, that advice is not right for me? Because I think a lot of artists, they see people who are successful and they might find something that works for them, and then they'll try it and it's like, oh man, this does not, it's just making it worse. Like, when do you know guardrails need to come up?
Yeah, I think for me what's been the most helpful is starting from my intention. So what expertise will not get you or answer for you is what you want. I think that a lot of people don't spend enough time asking themselves internally like what they want, being able to sit with the discomfort of realizing I actually don't know the answer to that question and figuring that out on their own. I think actually in a lot of ways that is something you have to find on your own, and it doesn't happen in a vacuum. Like, you still experiment and do things, but starting to lean into the things that feel really good and accept that even if it's different than what you planned, and recognize and accept the things that don't feel good even if it's not what you planned. For me, like, I thought that if I just had like client work coming in, that was all I needed and I would just feel good. And what I recognized over time was that was true for some clients, for some types of projects, for some types of pay, and it was not true for other types of clients with projects and pay. And validating that first and foremost was really important, because it's like, okay, this client feels great to work with every time. That's not what I expected in my career. This is some anonymous client who I can't even share the project with and whatever, but like, they were just a blast to work with. Why were they a blast to work with? What is it about that project that felt so good? Building that sort of internal criteria is helpful because it gives you sort of your anchor. And then I think at that point, when I know this is for me and I know this isn't for me, then you can utilize expertise to figure out how to leverage yourself and get you more of the things you like and less of the things you don't. That's where, like, if I went back to mentorship now, I'd be able to say, hey, Rich, like, I know what I want now. When I started with you, I wasn't sure, and we kind of uncovered it together, but now I'm convicted, and here's the parts of your expertise I want to tap into, and here's the parts of your expertise that it's amazing, but it's not for me.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So sounds like you taking a break from mentorship helped you delineate exactly what you wanted.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways. And some mentors can really help guide that journey. Like, I do try to do that with the people I work with, is I give them a lot of breathing room. I don't really try and pull them in any directions. I just try and reflect back to them what I hear them say over and over and over again. In a lot of ways, it's not that different. Good mentorships and guides, not that different than I think therapy or coaching. There's a ton of overlap. But yes, I think depending on where you're at in your journey and the kind of mentors you work with, it can have a really positive impact in helping you get clarity on that space. Or in some cases, it can do the opposite. It can make you lose sense of what's important to you and lose your vision. And ultimately, it's part of the whole journey, is people need a little bit of pain to kind of realign themselves. And then it's a question of if people use that pain for something constructive, or if they just kind of accept and sit with that pain and don't change, which is the thing I'm most terrified of, is not changing from pain. So
You've been very good at adapting, and you mentioned earlier that like you have a very low pain tolerance, which I kind of disagree with. As someone who has been observing you from a distance for a handful of years now, you'll get into a period of like doing all this client work, you're making money and working with some really cool properties, like Kung Fu Panda. Holy man, that's
Thanks,
that's
dude.
freaking awesome.
for the record, that was a great gig. That was
Okay.
one of my dream projects. So like that one was totally on the mark. But yeah,
But then you go off and be like, okay, you're working with these cool things. Yeah, sure, freelancing has its ups and downs. And then you go off and make an album. And it's just like, dude, you've made it. Why do you keep feeling the need to prove yourself?
that's a good question, man. I think because ultimately it's for me. All this is for me, you know? Maybe in the beginning it wasn't, actually. Maybe in the beginning there is a component of kind of I'll show you world that a lot of artists feel, which is like, you know, I can do this. Look at me. And there's a lot of, whether you want to call it like toxic fuel or negative fuel or anti-vision, there's a lot of things that artists lean into of what they don't want. That fuels a lot of their drive, I think, in the beginning. It was certainly true for me. It was like, I know I don't want to work a 9 to 5. You know, I had these hard lines like, I don't want to work a 9 to 5. I want to work some corporate job. Like, I don't want a boss telling me what to do. I don't want to be capped by not being able to ask for a raise. You know, I want control was a big part of my journey. And in a lot of ways, I got a lot of that, a lot of control. In other ways, once I hit that point where it's like, yeah, you know, I've made it or whatever, which, spoiler, I don't think anybody ever feels that way.
Yeah, no one does.
It just looks that way to people. But, you know, when I hit that point where it was like, okay, you know, like I've kind of done what I set out to do. Now what? There was a shift that I think happened for me. Well, it's like, you know, it's not really about proving anything anymore. It's about making something from, not from an anti-vision, but like a vision, like a positive place, a positive fuel. And the scariest thing for me personally was learning to let the negative fuel go. Like learning to come from a place in my growth that feels like energized and passionate and positive versus running away from things that I didn't want. That's hard because we get so attached to that fuel that, like, you know, if I don't stay on the grind, I'm not going to make any money. If I stop contacting clients, then I'm not going to get any more work. If I like don't optimize my setup, then it's going to take longer than usual and it's going to be really slow. Like that's all like this negative fuel stuff, and it's really effective. Like it really puts a fire under our ass, but it doesn't really make us happy. And I think that what I explored over the last year was like, what does it look like to create a positive fuel where I am actually like, maybe on the outside it looks like I'm doing the same things, but the difference internally is very different. Like I'm doing it for myself now instead of doing it to prove something to other people.
It sounds like the previous mindset was almost like this making decisions out of fear.
Sure, yeah.
And making decisions out of fear is effectively making decisions out of scarcity.
Yeah.
Never enough time, never enough resources. You can always do things faster, and it turns art into a business.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's ironic because that's what I wanted, ultimately I wanted to just spend as much time making music as possible. You know, that was kind of like the overarching goal. But in the beginning, our visions are so fuzzy that we kind of just throw a dart and hope it sticks, you know? And we don't really know what we want, actually. And it kind of gets unveiled as we go. And then we're kind of faced with a choice, which is you're going to learn about yourself as you go. You've now learned these things about yourself. And there's this kind of like proverbial fork in the road, which is, do you continue down the path that you've already set, knowing the things about yourself maybe that are a little bit misaligned? Or do you start to demonstrate more self-trust and believe that you're capable of creating something maybe that doesn't even exist before, maybe creating a career that doesn't exist, or an income source that doesn't exist, and just believing that you as an artist can apply that passion and that energy towards this vision and build something for yourself that's new, instead of taking the scarcity fuel and being like, this is as good as it's going to get, and, you know, like, I got a stable paycheck, a stable job, so I may as well just keep it that way. It's scary as heck. And there's obviously like tactical, logistical components to that too, of whether you have the ability to, but I just wanted to make sure I felt creatively fulfilled. Whether it means like maybe I make an album and continue to work with my own clients, maybe sometimes I take an off season where I don't work with clients and write an album, or whatever it looks like for me. I just wanted to get clear on what's important to me as an artist and make space for that, make time for that.
So the last album you made was 5 years ago, right? So it seems like... Yeah. So this album, you obviously have been successful over the last 5 years doing this, and now you're kind of pivoting. Do you think artists would benefit from taking on these projects that are significantly beyond their comfort zone? Or if not, why do you do them?
Yeah, well, the ironic thing to all this is it's not, in my experience, it's not been two separate things. So I've had this creative need and this like internal desire to do something. In my case, like, to be really specific, it was, you know, I was working on different games and different projects and client work. I was never really working on a long form project, and I was really craving storytelling. It's a huge reason why I got into what I do in the first place. I love a good story. And specifically, I always really like dark fantasy stuff. I've just loved that vibe. I never really had a client approach me with a project like that. And that became a point of resentment in some ways. Was this like, this is what I want and it's not showing up, and I'm being kind of pigeonholed in these certain directions. And so it hit a point where it was just like, well, I'm just gonna make this myself. You know, I'm not gonna wait anymore. I wanna do this. But what I've noticed is being a builder and being a visionary for what you want has the effect of bringing it to you. Like, as I've been able to share this album, now people know this is what I want. This is what I want to do. I put this out into the universe and I'd never put it out before. So likely as a consequence, I feel very assured that once this album is out, more opportunities will come my way that are going to be aligned to what I actually want to be doing. The scary part for people is, especially when you start to pursue in the career part of it, is like, we start to become dependent on, we just make art when people tell us to. And so we lose that muscle of having vision and building stuff for ourselves, and recognizing that like taking time to build something, even when no one's hiring us to do it, it's not making any money, ultimately is the biggest engine to get us more of what we want. So that's the thing that I've noticed has been really challenging for me to overcome. And also the kind of recurring thing I see, and truthfully, I mean, it's a whole tangent, but I think it is going to be the future of artistic careers in general, is like, we need visionaries to show us what's possible that we didn't realize was possible, not just service people who can do the job that someone wants us to do really well.
It sounds, well, like I think we follow a lot of the same people in the entrepreneurial space of attract the clients that you're looking for, make the work, make and show the work that you want to be paid to do.
That's right.
And maybe I will say, earlier you said you don't like pain. I disagreed, but now maybe I see it a little bit. You don't like pain. You don't like doing things you really don't want to do.
But I hate it.
So it's a little insane if you think about it. Like, I hate doing this other work that is, sure, it's paying your bills, but I hate it so much that I'm going to go do something way more painful over here to hopefully avoid this other like chronic pain that I'm dealing with.
Well, this is a really, I'm glad you brought this up, because I thought it was a controversial take. Apparently it's not so controversial, but I still think it is. I'm not like a huge advocate for the idea of discipline in the way that we think about discipline. I've always seen myself to be a very undisciplined person. And it sounds crazy when I tell people, they're like, what are you talking about? But here's my perspective on it. When I think of discipline, I think of pain. Like I think of sacrifice, of doing things that you don't want to do. But what I've noticed is, okay, fair. Like, yeah, you have to wrangle yourself up to show up for things that are important to you. The difference for me is it's never felt like discipline. Like if you are doing something you don't want to do, fundamentally you don't value it, you don't want to do it, there's a lot more pain that you have to experience in order to show up to do it. If you have gotten really clear on something that is important to you and you do want to do it and you value it, then maybe sometimes you have to use discipline to show up, but a lot less, because there's more passion, there's more drive, and there's more motivation to show up for the thing. And so for me, it's that lesser of two pains thing. It's like showing up to do a client project that I hate is way harder than starting an album and like showing up for another day to write this album because I love the kind of music I'm writing inside of it. They're both painful, I guess, in some ways, but one feels way less painful because it's important to me.
Okay, that does make a lot of sense. Like, I'm someone who enjoys powerlifting, so I'm okay enduring the pain of putting a 300-pound barbell on my back because, like,
Yes.
I don't care. It's just
Yeah.
I enjoy doing it.
And you
versus-
can feel that. Like, I think you can feel the difference between showing up for something that fundamentally you don't want to do versus showing up for something where you sort of realigned your values. Like, I'm curious for you, did you find when you started to get into fitness that at what stage did you start to find the value in it for itself? Like, when did you start to identify with it being a part of who you are?
That's a really good question. I mean, most men who start lifting in their 20s, they do it because they are trying to attract a mate and look better for the opposite sex.
Sure.
And then eventually there was that inflection point where it's like, oh yeah, I actually enjoy that. But I think it kind of goes into the alignment thing you were saying. Because in the realm of fitness, in the same way of art, there are so many different art forms. In the same way, there's so many ways to exercise. And you can take someone, and most people think that, like, exercise is running. You have to run to be healthy. And I can imagine for music, there's probably like, oh, if you want to play music, you have to be able to play the piano. But if someone is curious enough to try other things, eventually they'll be like, oh, you know what, I hate the piano. Everyone tells me I should do piano, but like they love making music using some like EDM program. I know nothing about like electronic music, but that's where they vibe. In the same way, like for me, when I discovered powerlifting, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And it doesn't feel like pain anymore. And I can imagine for you, this fantasy album that you make, like that pain that you had to endure, not to say that it seems like your other client work was it wasn't bad.
It's like excruciating.
It is excruciating?
No, it's not excruciating.
Okay.
It's not. But that's also where it's really, really sneaky, because it's easy to change when something's really painful. It's very hard to change when something is just a little bit painful.
Right.
So that's maybe in some ways when I'm saying like I have a low pain tolerance, I think I'm just very like intentionally sensitive. Like, because I know that little bit of pain is going to become a lot of pain if I don't become
something
mindful
about it.
and do something about it.
Chronic pain is often worse than like just getting burned once.
For sure. I mean,
Like-
I can tell you, like, my deepest value, which probably motivates most of the change, is the last thing that I would ever want to happen is to lose the outlet of creating music and creating art for myself, to have it no longer feel like it's for me. Like, that is my fundamental, deepest fear ever. And so whenever I sense that, hey, this thing, like, kind of taking you in that direction, if you're not careful, that's when I'm like, okay, we got to be really serious about adapting, because this needs to always feel like it's for me first. And if it doesn't feel that way, something has to change.
How would you encourage someone in the freelance realm, whether they're just getting started or they've been in on the front lines for a while, to like re-pick up the reins of doing something for themselves again? Because like you said, that's a muscle that eventually can be atrophy.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, the first thing that I did that was really helpful was get back to the source of why I started, you know? Think back on when you first found this thing and it really struck a chord with you. So much so that you're like, I need to do this. I'm compelled to do this. Like, what was it about that art that spoke to you? You know, what did it look like in your honeymoon phase when you were exploring that kind of art? What were you engrossing yourself with, or what were you immersing yourself into at that time? And I would just start, honestly, by revisiting some of that stuff. That's what I did in that period. I would sit on my armchair, I would turn on my gas fireplace, and I would just listen to Rachmaninoff, because that was the first composer that I ever listened to when I was about 14 years old that inspired me to want to become a composer. So I just sat down and just got back with that stuff and just sat with it and just made time for that. And it just naturally evoked a lot of these emotions that were dormant in me. Because I noticed that for me, what happened personally was I started to get a lot of pride out of being a craftsperson. Like, I'm so good at what I do. Like, I'm fast, I do high quality work. I started to value what people told me they valued as clients. But ultimately, that's not why I got into this in the first place. I got into it because I loved telling stories. I could express myself. And so I had to go back to that space, I think, and explore that. And I think the second really important thing is to not defer the responsibility of artistic fulfillment to your business or clients, because no client is ultimately going to give you that. You could have the best client project in the world, and your attitude about how you're approaching it and what the music means to you and what the project means to you is going to dictate how you feel about the project as you're working on it when it's done. I don't actually blame my clients for the misalignment I felt. It was about how I approached the projects and the mindset I had when I went into it. So having re-explored that and gotten back into it, I know now the things that feel aligned and which parts of those things are my responsibility to approach. That's why I redecorate my studio or light a candle before I do stuff. I do it with client projects now too, because it's up to me to make this space feel like a fun space, not my clients. They can't control that.
Mm-hmm. It seems like you do your best to not give yourself fall into a victim mentality.
Yeah.
You don't want to become resentful of the work and eventually phase out of it completely because you just experience this chronic pain all the time, mm-hmm. and then become a victim of what I think a lot of people outside of the artistic realm, the fitness realm, they just hyper specialize in this one thing and then they can't do anything else, mm-hmm. because they feel stuck and trapped. And it seems like you hate being trapped.
That's very accurate. I do hate being trapped. Yes, mm-hmm. very much so. And what's tough is you can't really control everything about your career. You can't control what people decide to hire you for, and you can't control what you get known for. You can't even control always what you're really exceptional at. But you can still make space for things that are important to you. And I think the real question I've been coming up against, I don't have a clear answer for it yet, but where that overlap is between things that are fulfilling for you and things that pay the bills. Sometimes I think they're separate, and I think that's totally valid. And that's where you get someone who has a 9-to-5 that, it's tolerable, but they can't wait to go home and work on their project. I don't think that person needs to drop their 9-to-5 and become a full-time freelancer. In some ways, that can actually take away from that separation that they have. But then if you do decide to merge those things like what we've done, I think it's important to just remember that it's still your responsibility to maintain that healthy relationship with your art and whatever that looks like to you, to develop a healthy relationship, take it out on a date or whatever, to make sure that you take care of that relationship and you don't defer it to the responsibility of your clients or getting paid enough or not spending so long on it or being dictated by whether your month is good or bad financially. It's still your responsibility, and it's something people can't give you that, and they also can't take it away from you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Taking complete agency in the outcome of your art.
That's right.
And just outsourcing that personal validation to your clients, because your clients, them paying you is a good sense of validation, but that's not going to give you the same artistic fulfillment as making something for yourself.
It's not going to make you feel good about the music you create either, or the art you create. I mean, there's a lot of people who get paid really well that feel like total frauds or hate their music. I really don't like the idea of when I hear a lot of artists be like, oh yeah, I can't look at my work. I just can't. And for me, I'm like, what is the point of making art if you don't enjoy the process or the outcome of doing it? For me, I don't. There's this idea of the sacrificial artist who just like throws everything away and just suffers so that everyone can enjoy their work. Maybe I'm selfish. I just don't like that idea at all. Like, I didn't get into this so I could suffer for people. I got into this so I could sandbox and enjoy and experiment and like what I do. So preserving that part is very important to me. And it's evolved over time. We have different needs as we grow. And sometimes it means I write some music and it has no place in client projects whatsoever. But it's important because it keeps me energized and alive and as an artist.
Interesting. Do you think that there is a number one skill that upcoming artists who are really resistant to like sharing their work, posting their work, they are they can't even talk about their work? You mentioned that earlier. Like, they only like it when it's finished, but they hate the process. Like, what about those people is like, I don't want to say you can't change people, but like, how can we reframe the work to not feel like work?
I think artists need a lot more play in general. I think play is extremely important, not taking things so seriously, not making your art. We all have a desire for self-expression, and sometimes we get frustrated when we feel like our art doesn't fully represent what we're trying to say, or we want it to feel like. I've experienced that. I continue to have that happen, but just being a little softer about the whole process and just recognizing this is an ongoing journey. The journey is the destination. Ultimately, like, it's all about finding that sense of play as you're moving through it. I think curiosity is a really good entry point into play. So instead of saying, this thing sucks, I suck, I can never do this, I think I've always tried to be very curious. So just say, it's a lightness about it. It's not, why isn't this working? It's, why isn't this working? Like, what's that all about? That's weird. Or I didn't know I was going to feel that way. That's weird. What's that all about? Why is this instrument not clicking with the music? I don't understand. How come this melody feels like, I want it to feel sad? How come it feels like a little bit hopeful? What's that about? And just exploring art with a sense of curiosity and lightness, I think, is a really good muscle that can help make the process feel more enjoyable, and also ultimately make hard work not feel so painful. Because you still work hard with a sense of curiosity. You're digging and digging, but it's just a totally different energy than like hitting a wall, beating yourself up, slamming against it, going to bed at 4 a.m., trying to solve one little problem instead of just taking a 30-minute break. It's just a sense of lightness, I think, that artists can use and not take everything so freaking seriously.
So I kind of see how you expressing play is a really important thing, because earlier you said that you like the adventure, the hero of a story. There's no specific class. It was just like you like the hero's journey, and it seems like I've always thought about this, where the hero's journey is almost like this curious thing. Because if you look at a hero who's not a hero, they're just a person, and they're not curious about solving their problems, changing their circumstances, outcome, then they're no longer a hero. But a hero is someone who's curious about, how can I make life better? And I'm curious.
Yes.
Is there a, like, I see how you want to be the hero of your own story, because you see these things, you see these problems, you want to change them. Is there a way in which, some parting words that you could help someone, how you think people could become the hero of their own story?
Ooh, oh, that's so good, dude. Start with one thing that feels scary for you, and just take the smallest possible step in that direction, and just trust that overcoming that fear around that thing is going to yield rewards for you that's going to change what you believe is possible for you.
I love that. Yeah, doing the hard thing is sometimes the scariest thing, but if you do a little bit of it, it gets easier with every single note that you play, every single rep that you do, whatever it is.
And confidence comes from a change of identity. I mean, you can't feel confident about something until you've proven to yourself what you're capable of. And it doesn't have to be a big, massive thing. You don't have to say, oh, I'm a real artist because I've worked for DreamWorks or something like that. It's like, no, I'm a real artist because today I showed up for my art. Today I did the thing that was hard for me today, and that's all that matters. And you only ever have to focus on today. You don't have to worry about like where you're going to be 2 years from now, because the only things you can actually control about that is your behavior, what you do each day. So it's like, I just say start small, keep it light, stay curious, have fun, and just focus on tiny incremental points of growth.
I love that. Now, I do want to end this podcast, and at the end of all of my podcasts, I do a little exercise. So I'm going to go grab something from my bag really quick.
Cool. Okay, I love it. You got a sense of play too.
Yeah, I do. I do very much have a sense of play. Oh, please tell me it's in here. Oh, yes, I do. Okay, cool. So you mentioned a little bit that as an artist, you can't fully control the outcomes of things, but you can kind of control how you show up. And like being curious, doing those little reps, some days it's going to be hard, some days it's going to be bad. You kind of need to just work and roll with those punches sometimes.
Yeah.
So in Dungeons and Dragons, you have a D20. And I would like you to roll this D20, and I would like you to share with us whatever the outcome is. How would you respond to that number, whether it's high or low? So
Cool.
On your desk, you may roll.
I'm gonna roll it on the desk.
The D20.
Roll it next to my YouTube plaque. Oh
no! Don't fall.
I'll have to get a new one.
Yeah.
13.
13. All right, that's a pretty good. That's above average. So it's not the best roll in the world. It's not the worst roll in the world.
Yep.
But when you experience a 13 in life out of 20, how do you respond to that?
There's a lot of 13s in my life, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say don't underestimate the growth that you're having. Continue to take things slow. Don't get impatient waiting for the 20, for the highest one. Waiting for the 20. Make sure to celebrate those wins, even if they feel small, because they're parts of that growth. And just ask yourself what it would look like to roll a 14 tomorrow.
Okay, I love that you said roll a 14 instead of 20, because those little pieces, I think we fixate on the massive wins versus the little things that we can do every day.
Yeah, that's right. 14 is a big jump. Like, you roll one up each day and you're going to hit a 20 in a week.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take much.
That's a 5% difference.
Yeah, that's right.
Amazing. Zach, thank you so much for being on the Creative Adventure podcast. I hope it was a fun time.
I loved it, dude.
Can you first share what the latest project that you did so people can go search it?
I just am finishing, maybe it'll be out, The Call of Raven's Hollow. It's my album that represents all of that sandbox time in the last 8 months that I've been working on it. So super proud to share it. There's more on my YouTube, filmed by you.
Oh, thank you.
And I'd love for people to check it out and go listen to it.
Amazing. I'm very excited to it. Internet, go listen to it. It's freaking amazing. So I highly recommend. And where can people find you on social media? I
am on YouTube, Zach Heyde. I'm on my website, zachheyde.com. And then you can also just reach out to me over email if you want to chat.
Amazing. Thanks, dude. Good seeing you.
So much fun, man.
Yeah,
Such
thank you for joining me on the Creative Adventure podcast. May the freelance dice forever roll in your favor.
Oh, love it. As with you.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah.
Goodbye, friends.
Goodbye.